Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing part 2 of the fuel rail system. So initially we did a fuel rail system and we did the drop-in injectors that we modified, the 550cc's with the adapters. Today we are going to be doing the other cell since I had purchased both of them. This is the fuel rail kit that will use the Siemens injectors. And this is made by RSI, or Racing Solutions. Seems to be a pretty quality kit. It comes with 2 rails, the clamps that hold it down, a new clamp for up here in the front, and all the bolts and accessories and the AN fittings for whatever fuel system you decide to choose. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to take off the cowl because we have to be able to get to the back. So we will remove the cowl by removing 4 bolts around the face of it. Yes, mine is aftermarket and different, but yours will be the same thing. You'll have a bolt there, you'll have a bolt there, and same on the other side. We will have to remove the windshield wipers and the sprayer nozzle hoses, which you can see down here. Get that whole thing off so we can access the fuel lines in the back. So let's go ahead and do that, and also pull out our old injectors. Alright, so I just took out 4 screws, didn't think you'd probably need to see that. As far as these, all you're going to want to do is take a flathead screwdriver, pry out the bottom corner. If I can do this on camera, with holding the camera. Pop it up like that. Carefully slide it out. Then you'll see a 1/2 inch bolt that you can simply spin off, and this whole thing should come off. So let's get that done real quick. Alright, so the nut's off. Now when the nut's off, it's really simple. All you do is go ahead and lift up the wiper arm, pop it off, slide it out of the way, move the cowl forward, and you will see the lines attached in the back. Simply disconnect them, and we can pick this cowl up and put it out of the way. Alright, now that that's out of the way, it's time to take out the injectors. Alright, injectors are out. Now we can actually get a good look at the fuel line coming in right here. If you can see it down there. So what we're going to have to do, we're actually going to have to block that off because that's not going to be used anymore. This line is going to have a AN fitting attached to it and adapted to the new braided fuel line, which will come to the rail. Down here and crossed over to the other rail and back down. So let's go ahead and put some of this together. Alright guys, so here is the Siemens injectors, and just to give you an example of the difference between the two of them, you can see where this one is again a side feed, and these ones here are a top feed, so the fuel comes in the top as opposed to coming into the side, and then obviously out the bottom. So you can see an idea of difference in size and everything like that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fit everything and start putting things together. Alright guys, so I'm going to attempt to explain how to put these on. It didn't come with any instructions. All I had is one picture on their website to kind of go off of. And from what I can gather, you'll see that both rails have holes on just one side of them. Obviously the injectors would connect to the bottom of it, but there will be holes on the one side of them. That side is the outside. And from what I can gather, you can kind of see the grooves right here. They kind of ramp up towards the back. And the bolts that hold them on simply bolt with the skinny side out to the rail. Now what'll happen here is I'll bolt this to 3 of the old injector bolt holes right here. So both the outside ones and the center one. And then we'll put the injectors in, making sure to lube the injectors because again you don't want to destroy the O-rings as you slide those things on. And then once they slide on, we'll push the top rail down and we'll bolt these up to the rail. So it looks like the short bolts are what go into the rail, and the longer bolts go down into the manifold. So let me see if I can get this thing put together for you guys and give you guys an example of what it looks like when it's done. Alright guys, real quick, I used Loctite, blue Loctite obviously, for these bolts so they don't come loose. I didn't snug them down yet. I put them in loosely, and then what I did is I took the rail and I kind of pushed them up to it to make sure they were sitting perfectly flush and even with this before I bolt everything in. So now that they're flush, I am going to crank down the lower bolts and then I'll get the injectors in. Alright guys, so I lubed the upper and lower O-rings, pushed them all in, seated them, and kind of angled them the way I wanted it, which kind of went with the way the direction of the connector was coming from. Lined everything up, slightly pushed a little pressure and slid it down, tapped on it to make sure it was good, and everything's lined up. And it looks like all 3 bolt holes are lined up, so I'm going to go ahead and put the upper bolts in it. There we go. Everything bolted in smoothly, easily, and nice and tight, and they are firm. Like it feels like you can rock the car with this thing. So great installation. Really nice quality product, so I can't complain at all. Right now, though, I'm going to get the other side in, and then we're going to figure out what we're going to do with the fuel lines, and we have a bracket that we have to change as well, so let's get that done. Alright guys, we ran into a quick snag. The fuel pressure release, it's got to go. Won't work staying there. It's in the way of the rail. And I checked both of the rails, there's no cutouts for them, and I guess with the height there couldn't be. Really, if you look as far as in as it goes. So we're going to have to go ahead and remove that. Hopefully I have a cap that'll cap that off. So let me see what I got. Alright, so guys, I didn't have the fitting. I had a Randall Lowe's, and I got the fitting. It's just a 1/8 inch MIP fitting. There's the part there. I ordered a couple extra ones just to have them. You can see how it fits in there. So now we got the 3 main blocks to hold it in. We're going to put the injectors in on this side and the rail on. And then again, I got to figure out something with the fuel line here. I called Racing Solutions. They don't know what size that is. I'm going to have to figure out what size it is to see what kind of adapter I can get to the AN fittings that are on this thing. So I'm going to work on that, but this is basically it here. Obviously, after I get this on, we'll have to plug in these, but let me get that on real quick. I'll give you a shot of what it looks like when it's done. Alright guys, there's both rails installed. All the injectors are plugged in. I want to make a note again to tell you guys to make sure that you use blue thread locker on the Allen bolts that we just put in. Please don't use any red or permanent thread locker. I know it sounds stupid. The problem is that a lot of people think, well, you know, it's not going to hurt. I want to make sure they don't come off. But when you do have to take it off, if you think about it, you can't put heat on a fuel rail, or at least you shouldn't. So kind of a bad idea there. Anyhow, next step here is to put on the throttle bracket that came with the kit. If you'll notice, the original one, when set in place, doesn't really work because of the fuel rail. And so what they've done is they've included another bracket. It simply comes upward rather than down. So really simple. I'm going to go ahead and bolt that on now. We'll move from there. Alright, so I was wrong with the manufacturer's bracket that was sent. If you look at it, you can really see how much of an angle that the line would be at. It just doesn't work. So what I ended up having to do was take the factory bracket, I bent it back just a little bit farther so it's a little bit more of a slant, and this was originally facing downward. I went ahead and bent it up, and now it's at much less of an angle. Still a little bit of an angle, but it's much more aligned, so we shouldn't have any problems. Okay, so now it's time to put our fittings inside the rails and our adapter from our original fuel line. So if we're looking at the fuel rail again, you're going to see when you take yours out that your O-ring probably looks like mine. It's basically worthless. So I had an extra old fuel injection O-ring that I put on top of mine. I don't know if that's the exact size it needs, but that's what I have on hand. This particular hose size is an M16 by 1.5. You can also find many drain plugs the same size. Speaking of which, what'll plug that will be a cheap Dorman $3.99 drain plug. We'll show you here in a minute. But as far as fittings, we are going to put an AN6 male on this end, AN8 male, AN8 male, and an AN8 plug in this end here, all of which you'll see laying here. So we have our AN8 plug, we have our 90-degree female fitting A6 that'll go here. I'm sorry, AN6. We have our 90-degree AN8s that'll go up in the front there, and those will be put on a hose like this here. I will show you how to cut that and how to adapt it to make it fit. And here's our adapter that goes from that M16 to the AN fittings. So let's go ahead and start getting some of these things put together. Let's start by putting the fittings inside the rails first. Alright guys, so all the fittings are fitted now again. AN6 male, AN8 male, AN8 male, AN8 plug. So they fit good. I will say initially when I placed this order, I wanted polished aluminum to match everything else, so they sent black. Whatever, looks fine. I just want to let you guys know, though, black does scratch. The anodizing scratches very easily. So if you look at some of these fittings, just from the wrenches getting on the edges of them, they scratch really easy. So anyhow, now it's time. We need to measure out and figure out exactly how small I have to cut this hose here to get to this AN fitting on this side. We are going to do that real quick. I'll measure it out. I'll show you how to cut it and what ways work best, at least have for me, and then we'll get it installed. Alright, so I went ahead and screwed this side on, and again now we're trying to figure out exactly the length we're going to get. So I kind of line it up, and I know that it's obviously pretty short because the hose goes all the way up, basically down to the bottom of this fitting. And so what I got to do now is get a piece of tape right here and kind of mark it. So the reason you use tape around this thing, because that nylon braided outside will basically fray, and you won't be all that happy with it when it does. So we'll go ahead and we're going to wrap that piece around it. And grab a marker or a pen. Again, we're going to line up this right about here. And we know that we need to cut that right about down here somewhere. So now that that's marked, we're going to go ahead and cut that in the vise. Give me one moment. All right, and typically what I do with these is I go ahead and put the line at the top of the vise so I can get something flat with it, and I'll go ahead and use a saw and cut it flat across. Now you can also use an angle grinder. It's kind of win some, lose some on that. So first thing I usually try is a hacksaw, and then I go to angle grinder. But let me cut this off real quick. Okay, now you'll see that we got this cut off flat. Again, I just took the saw and sawed it across. Get a nice even cut. And we'll bring it back over here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a temporary alignment to make sure that this lines up like we thought it was going to. So spin that side on. And I'll kind of spin this side on here. Sorry. And that looks to be about right to me. So what we have to do now is take these off. Come back over here to the vise. And I'm going to go ahead, what I like to do, to try to avoid scratches, even though it's going to scratch anyways, is lay a soft cloth over top of this. And I'm going to go ahead and clamp in the lower end after I push the hose down as far as I can. And then I'm going to twist this thing down as tight as I can get. I really want to get to the point where these just about meet these two pieces right here. So as tight as I can. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll get right back with you. Alright, so what I like to do, like I said, I take that, it's going to be tough to tell, but you take your braided line, you push it as far down as it'll go down in there. And because these vices have teeth, as you can see on them, I like to be able to put a piece of flat metal between the unit in itself as we start clamping it down. So what I like to do is get a layer over top of it like this and clamp it in. They do make vice clamps for this that work for this. But I don't happen to have one, so this is just kind of the way I do it. So let me go ahead and get this all set up, and I'll show you how that thing made it together. Alright, so now it's mated in there, or I'm sorry, now it's mounted in there. What I like to do is just put a little drop of WD-40 around the edge of this so it'll slide down into that rubber hose easily. And you're going to go ahead and start it off and start spinning like so. And eventually you'll start seeing it getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. So we'll keep going down. You're going to get to the point where it's not going to be able to be done by hand, and you're really going to have to crank on it. You'll probably use an open-end wrench of some sort or another. And also, too, to prevent scratching this anodized here, since the black seems to scratch so easy. And let me adjust this just a hair. You can also put the cloth over top of this as well. So let me go ahead and crank this down. We'll go see if we can get her mounted on. Alright, so here it is, guys. We did come with a couple little battle scars there. And what are you going to do, I guess? But what you're going to want to do, because these are offset, this one compared to this one, you kind of got to get the first one on a couple spins, and then try to get the second one on. And hopefully the flex, that little bit of flex you have in the center, is going to let that offset straighten itself out. So right now it feels good. Everything's sliding on. I don't seem to feel any problems. Everything's good, and all I gotta do is tighten it down. It's on there. So the end fittings on that side are done. We'll just have to do the incoming next. All right, and next up now is our M16 by 1.5 adapter into our female, and our female AN, or Army Navy fitting, number 6 into the male here. So let's go ahead and connect those real quick. All right, now last but not least is our drain plug, which will be plugging the original hole where the fuel line came in. So again, this is an M16 by 1.5. It was $3.99 at Advance Auto Parts near me. What we're gonna have to do is cut off this upper section here because it's too long to fit in. So we'll shave that off. I think what I'm gonna do, because I'm kind of torn between sealing and locking it in for two reasons. And the first and most important is that it's over top of the fuel or the ignition coils. So I'd hate to have fuel leak on those for obvious reasons. But at the same time, I want to make sure it stays in with like Loctite, but I also want to make sure it stays sealed and doesn't leak. So I think what I'm going to try to do is put some Teflon on the bottom side of this, and in the very top threads do a little bit of blue Loctite to get that thing held in there. So let me go ahead and cut the top off this and see how it fits. Alright guys, so it fits perfect with our Teflon washer, if you can see that. So again, I went ahead and put a little bit of Teflon tape on the bottom within the washer and then the blue Loctite on top. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that in real quick, and this should just about do it. Let's see how it fits. Alright guys, so there it is, completely locked in, nice and sealed. Worked perfectly. So when that's done, all you need to do as a final step is go ahead and pressure test the system, and by doing that, all you need to do is basically put your key in the ignition and let the ignition cycle a couple times and the fuel prime. And just basically double check that there's no leaks anywhere and you're good to go. So that concludes the second section of the fuel injection setup for the DIY Viper Supercharger build. I hope you guys found it somewhat helpful. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe. Any comments, please leave them below. I try to answer them as best I can. And thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode.